First, well, I wanted to have you on because I wanted to discuss with you just this idea of classical learning. What inspired you to want to focus on this and devote your life to teaching and spreading those kinds of values?
It's a great question. It's so interesting to me that education, or like what was a good education, it really didn't change for about 2,000 years. I mean, you go from Augustine all the way to Plato's Republic, all the way forward to the American Revolution, our founding fathers, even to the beginning or the mid of the 19th century. For 2,000 years, a good education it meant classical languages, it meant logic, it meant philosophy, it meant rhetoric, it meant penmanship. So many of the main things that define a great education are now no longer part of education at all. And realizing this was the kind of education that in many ways gave birth to America, the kind of education that's kind of baked into our founding documents, and that a part of the crisis we're having as a nation, as a civilization, has come about because we've gotten away from this towards a secular progressive model of education, which is really more pushing ideology than educating young people.
Yeah, for sure. When do you think that education shifted from the way it was for those 2,000 years to whether that's becoming just different in different places or maybe becoming more woke? How do you feel like that kind of change began?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if you had to put your finger in one place, I think it's actually right around the beginning of the compulsory education movement, which really starts after the Civil War up in New England. And so part of what was going on is that when they made education, mandatory in New England, there was actually some denominational infighting among various Christian groups about exactly what was getting taught. And they kind of used that to take religion completely out of schools. But eventually that led to not just religion, but really morality in general. And you think about the language, just the language itself that was used for education for centuries and centuries. They didn't even call it education. They actually would call it formation. He's being sent off to formation, or she's being sent away from formation. It was about the formation of the whole human person, heart, character, and everybody agreed what that formation was. It was cultivating the virtues, the disciplines of hard work, of courage, of honesty, of mastery of self, of prudence, of temperance. This concept of education is formation is what's gone and what we need to get back to.
Definitely. And this is kind of a random question, but how do you kind of see the relationship between how there used to be maybe not a lot of education for a lot of people, but some people had a very good education. Maybe they became monks and they studied a lot. How do you think it kind of happened where now that so many people have education, but they're not really getting education? How do you kind of see that relationship? Because I think it's sad that as soon as classical education was sort of banned from most schools, most colleges, that's the time when the country basically said you have to go to college in order to do anything. College is essential, and yet college then kind of started becoming meaningless.
Yeah, so this is a fact that blew my mind. It's just thinking generationally about what's happened in American education. The group that does the worst in terms of the U.S. citizenship test, 81% of people under 45 cannot pass the U.S. citizenship test. This is an NBC poll, right? So not even right or left, it's NBC, and they said they did our own research, and 81% of people under 45 can't pass the U.S. citizenship test. What was really shocking is that for people over 65, 74% of them can pass. So we're going from a 19% pass rate to a 74% pass rate within 2 generations. What's really interesting is that the group that's under 45, that demographic, has also had the most formal education. And so they've gone to all of these years of schooling, but they can't pass a basic civics test about the U.S. Constitution. So I think what we've seen is we've moved away from any kind of serious substance, and instead we've moved towards this vague concept of skills, critical thinking skills, higher order thinking skills. Nobody really knows what this stuff means, but they use this language to get away from the transmission of serious core knowledge. which is what education was, in addition to the character formation part, again, for generations.